Hi, Bob Long, LADC. Today I'd like to talk about the difference between responding and reacting. And I know most of us, if we sit down and we think about that, it's fairly simple to understand. I like to make points by telling stories. And here's a story from my past. Back, I think in 2017, 2018, I get a knock on the door. And I'm at 9 o'clock at night. I'm thinking, who in the heck is this? I go over and this gentleman says, are you Bob Long? I said, yes. And now, some of you may not know is I'm a pistol instructor on the weekends, okay, here in Oklahoma. So he says, Bob Long, the pistol instructor? I said, yes. Now, there's a sign in my front yard and advertisement on my car. And he says, listen, I'd like to talk to you about a class. He said, can I get your phone number? I said, sure. He hands me this packet. And, could you hold this for a second? And he hands me this packet. And as soon as I get it in my hand, he said, you've been served. And he takes off. And at this point, I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm an idiot. I should have said, my number's on the car. Give me a call sometime. But anyway, so I open this packet up and I'm in Tulsa County and this says Creek County. And I'm thinking, what's going on in Creek County? At that time, I had the Freedom Ranch Pistol Academy out in Bristow, Oklahoma. And so I thought, okay, maybe it has something to do with that. It didn't have anything to do with that. I was being sued for a chicken coop that I had co-signed on. My first wife, her family needed someone to co-sign. I said, okay, I'll do that. So lesson one, don't co-sign on anything, okay? But a harmless chicken coop is like $2,000 or something like that, which is overpriced. And they were looking for damages in excess of $6,000. So there's late fees and penalties and interest and I don't know whatever else. And I thought, this is crap. I live in the city, Tulsa. I live in Tulsa. I just co-signed on it. But when you co-sign on something, you become responsible for, the loan. And I had become responsible. So anyway, if I wanted to react to that, my first reaction was throw it in the trash. But I went like, no, it said on the form I had 30 days to respond in writing. So it gives me time to think about this. So I said, okay, no problem. So I'm thinking, I need legal advice. Don't know if I can afford legal advice, but I knew where to get legal advice for free. I simply grabbed, hold on one second. I grabbed a spiral notebook. I grabbed an ink pen. I took PTO, a day off work. I went down to the courthouse where all the lawyers like to hang out. And I had the documents in my hand. We'll just pretend these are those documents. I had these documents in my hand and that I'd been served with. And I went in there and I went like, okay, I know all of these people are wanting to get some money out of me for legal, services. So I go in there and I had to bait the hook. So I'm going like, oh my gosh, what's going on here? I'm looking helpless. And sure enough, within 15 seconds, a lawyer comes up and says, can I help you? Are you lost? I said, no, I'm being sued. He said, you're being sued? I said, yes, over a chicken coop. He said, a chicken coop? I said, yes. And he snatches this paperwork out of my hand. And first thing he notices is it's not even, I'm in Tulsa County Court. This is in Bristow. And he says, oh, no. You're in the wrong place. I said, no, I got other business here. I'm just trying to figure out what I need to do. He said, well, you need to respond to this. I said, how do I respond? He said, well, you want to put something in writing. I said, like what? He said, well, let me give you some examples. He said, I know you co-signed on this out of the goodness of your heart, but did you ever own the chicken coop at your property? I said, no, of course not. He said, things like that. And he says, did you make the profit off the sale of any eggs? I said, no, I didn't make any profit off the sale of any eggs. So it's not a business adventure. I said, no, not at all. Again, doing it out of the kindness of my heart. He said, things like that. So I take my notebook And I write down exactly what he said. And what I'm doing is I'm building my response. So I go to another part of the courthouse, and this courthouse is huge in Tulsa County. And I play the same game, and pretty soon a lawyer comes up and says, "Can I help you? What's going on?" I said, I'm being sued over a chicken coop. A chicken coop, and he rips it out on my hand. I swear, these lawyers bite like perch. Okay, if you know anything about perches, you throw the hook in it and they bite, whether there's a worm on it or not. So anyway, he's looking at it and he says, "Oh my gosh, $6,000 on a chicken coop?" I said, "Yeah, it's only $2,000 initially." He said, yeah, I get that. I said, "What do I put in the response?" He said, "Well, okay, did you ever buy any chickens for the chicken coop?" I said, "No." He said, "Did you ever make a profit off the sale of eggs or the sale of chickens?" I said, "No." He said things like that. So I play this game over and over and over. Now, some of the answers, or some of the questions I get would be duplicates. I don't write the duplicates down. I just write down, So I am gathering. So by the time I get home, I have 10 points that I can put in my response. Now, I don't know what a response looks like. Thank God for Google or whatever, right? So I go to Google and I go like, how do you respond to a summons? And there are like thousands and thousands of photos of actual responses. And, I sort of look through about 10, 15 of them, and I sort of get the gist of what they're looking for. Case number, stuff like that, and the name of the file, somebody versus somebody, right? So I fill that out, and then I address all 10 of those points. I think I had 10 or 11 points. Now, I will say this, the last attorney gave me the best advice. He said, "Make sure you send this in, certified mail, return receipt requested." I said, "Okay." So I have this ready. I'm mailing it in on the 23rd, 24th day. I go to the post office. I pay the extra money for certified mail, return receipt requested. Sure enough, I get that, return receipt requested. They got it. I sent it to the court, and I sent it to the lawyers that were suing me. So I take another day off to go up to Bristow Courthouse, and I'm sitting there. And all day long I'm sitting there. 4 o'clock comes and the judge says, "Well, it's about time to get out of here and go fishing." Country. Okay. So anyway, I said, "Sir, what about Bob?" By the way, that's my favorite movie. What about Bob? And he says, "Who are you?" And I said, "I've got a summons to be here." He said, "Approach." So I come up and I give it to him. And he looks at it and he says, "Oh my God, you're being sued for a chicken coop." He checks the date. Yeah. And he says, are the plaintiffs or whoever, I don't know legal terms, people suing you here? And of course the lawyers were there, two lawyers. And in the course of that discussion, they said, the judge asked him, "What do you want?" He said, "Well, since Mr. Long did not respond in writing, we would like to have a summary judgment against him for the full amount of $6,000 and some odd change." And I said, "Your Honor, I did respond in writing, and I have return receipt requested and certified mail." He said, "Bring it up here." So I reach in my pocket, I pull it out, I hand it to him, and he said, and he looks on OSC, and he says, "Yes, Mr. Long responded to this, and here his proof. Do you have a Emily somebody working in your office?" "Well, yeah, she's our secretary." He said, "Well, he responded, you received it, so they lied right there in court." Okay, well, it's Friday, it's the afternoon. The judge is being a little lenient with him, and he says, "Well, Your Honor, what our plaintiff, what our client really wants is the return of the chicken coop, and we don't know where it's at, and we're hoping that Mr. Long will be able to help us." Now, 3 minutes ago, they were suing me for $6,000 and wanted a summary judgment. Now they want my help. Okay, I love these people. And the judge looked at me and said, "Do you have this?" I said, No, Your Honor. That's in my response. I've never had it. Matter of fact, it's exactly where their client delivered it." And he said, "Oh, He said, well, we looked at him, he said, well, and they said, well, we don't know where that is. I had a copy of the original contract. I said, Your Honor, I have a copy of the original contract with the address on it. Would you like to see it? Judge said, approach. And I go up there and I hand it. I'm prepared. And he says, well, Mr. Long, are they still at this address? I said, absolutely. He said, great. And he said, well, and he said, now they lied again. They don't know where it is, but yet they had a contract with the address on it. And so he looks at he looks at the two lawyers who are now looking a little befuddled, and you can see sweat on their brow, which I love to see. And they said, well, Your Honor, we haven't been able to get in contact with him, and we just cannot get in contact with him. I said, Your Honor, the phone number on that contract is still a good phone number. May I call it from here? And he just smiled at me. He said, go right ahead, Mr. Long. So I pull out my cell phone. I call that number. I make sure the judge can see the number I'm calling. And it rings 2 times, and they answer. And I said, hey, I'm in court. I'm being sued over that chicken coop I signed for. I said, is it still there at your house? Oh yeah, it's still there. Matter of fact, we called them. This is on speakerphone. We called them multiple times asking them to come and get it. I said, okay, and they never came to get it? No, they never came to get it. I said, thank you. Hung up the phone. Now the judge is a little pissed. And he looks at the two lawyers and he says, well, what do you have to say? He said, well, Your Honor, we've been out there and the fence is locked and we can't gain access. I said, Your Honor, a little while ago they said they didn't know where it was. A little while ago they said they couldn't get in contact with anybody. A little while ago they were completely ignorant. Now they know exactly where it is and that there's a lock on the fence. I said, let me tell you, they have horses. And that lock is not a lock, it's a chain. It's one of those little things you can push in, you know, a little carabiner thing. You can open the gate very easily. Their child does it to cars coming in. You don't need a key. And you're going to repossess a chicken coop that they've asked you to come out and get. I said, he said, that I've heard enough. I've heard enough. Now, if you've ever co-signed on a loan and you got called into court, you know that the odds of you winning this is not in your favor. But I took the time to respond. I took the time to gather the knowledge I needed together. And quite honestly, it helped quite a bit because I had 2 of the 3 stooges suing me, and they were not prepared. But they were hoping that I would not show up. They were hoping that I would have thrown that away. They were hoping for the easy, yep, Mr. Long owes you $6,000, and let's put a lien on his property. They didn't get that. What they got was a person who came in prepared because I prepared the proper response. And folks, we have got to learn how to respond and not react, because when we react to things, it usually doesn't turn out all that good in our favor. Okay, so this is oh, and then the judge said, if either of you ever come back to my court again and you are totally unprepared and you're going to lie to me, he said, I'm not going to put you in the jail, I'm going to put you under the jail. Now I'm smiling, and I said, I forget what I said. I said, Your Honor. He said, yes, Mr. Long. And he said, case dismissed. He gavelled, and I said, Your Honor. He said, yes. I said, can I get that in writing? Don't you press your luck, Mr. Long. I got out of there really fast on a Friday. I got out of there. I was smiling all the way back, and I said, yeah, I am so glad I didn't react, because if I would have reacted, I would have been out $6,000. Guys, how many times have you reacted and it cost you? Okay, don't react. Learn how to respond. Well, that was a waste of 15 minutes of your time that you'll never get back in your life, but I hope you got the idea that knee-jerk reactions are usually not the best reactions. Have a good day. Thank you.